Jessica and I tied the knot 15 years back. We'd been dating exclusively for 3 years, ever since that first date back when Jessica was a sophomore in college. I'm Ethan Roberts, by the way. I was in my junior year when I met Jessica at a party, and from that moment, we were practically inseparable, right up until I graduated 2 years later. For Jessica's senior year, we decided to do the long-distance thing with plans to get married after her graduation. About 6 months into our marriage, we went to a party with several other couples around our age. It was a lively barbecue, steak sizzling on the grill and drinks flowing. As the night wore on, most folks had drifted off, leaving just us and 3 other couples gathered around a fire pit, chatting and sipping our drinks. That's when someone brought up the idea of a celebrity hall pass. Celebrity hall pass? I asked, a little lost. Lauren, a petite blonde sitting next to me, jumped in. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a game where you pick a celebrity you'd want a free pass to be with, like a one-time pass to break your wedding vows, just for them. So, this is just some kind of game you play? I asked, still a bit skeptical. Lauren nodded, patting her husband, Matt, on the leg. Yes and no, she replied. It's a game, sure, but Matt and I actually have a standing agreement, a real one. We each get one hall pass. Doesn't have to be a celebrity either. I was floored. Wait, seriously? You're telling me you two have an agreement that either of you can go out and be with someone else, just like that? Matt grinned at me, looking me dead in the eyes, and laughed. Yep, that's the gist of it. Though there's a bit more to it. He pointed to the other couples. They're in on it too. All of us agreed to this on the same night. Emily, didn't you already use your hall pass? Emily glanced down, looking a little embarrassed. Matt, don't need to announce it to the world, she muttered. Yes, I did. I was at a work conference, and there was this guy, a widower whose wife had just died in a car accident. I called Jason and told him I'd be using my hall pass to help him out. Jessica, who'd been mostly quiet, scooted a bit closer to me and held my hand. Jason, I asked, you were okay with Emily being with another man? Oh yeah, totally fine, Jason replied. She came back home to me, and I'll get my chance to use mine sometime down the line. The game went on, with everyone naming their celebrity picks. Jessica even nudged me to pick someone myself after she'd announced her choice. Now, 15 years later, I can't recall who either of us picked that night. But I do remember that night's passion. When we got home, things got intense, and Jessica even confessed that she'd imagined her fantasy guy while we were together. The next morning, I made it crystal clear that I'd never be okay with a real-life hall pass. Jessica agreed, saying it was just part of the game. That night mostly slipped out of my mind as the years passed. Jessica and I moved forward, starting a family not long after. We soon had a son and a daughter, back to back. For a few years, we kept in touch with Lauren and Matt, but we eventually lost contact after their divorce. Then, a couple of years ago, I bumped into Matt at a bar. I dropped by after work and saw him sitting there alone. We grabbed a drink, and he caught me up on things. Not only had he and Lauren split up, but so had the other 2 couples from that barbecue. And the root cause? The hall pass. Matt said they all thought a hall pass would let them bring a bit of excitement into their marriages without any fallout. He admitted they couldn't have been more wrong. After each couple had used their passes, it sparked comparisons and distrust. That suspicion grew into resentment, and eventually, it all led to divorce. Talking with Matt had only confirmed what I'd felt that night at the barbecue about this whole hall pass idea. Sure, maybe it sounded harmless as a fantasy, but in reality, it was a ticking time bomb. I'd meant to tell Jessica about running into Matt, but life got busy, and I never got around to it. Sitting here now, I regret that I hadn't. It was a Thursday night, and Jessica was away at a conference out in LA. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was Jessica calling. I could tell from the noise on her end that she was in a club, and her voice had that telltale slur of someone who'd been drinking. "You're not going to believe this, but we just met Ryan Turner, you know, from my soap," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "He actually likes me, Ethan. I'm going to use my hall pass." The noise on her end suddenly spiked. "What was that? Did you just say something about using a hall pass?" "Yeah, honey," she replied. "I knew you'd understand. See you Saturday." "What? Jessica, are you serious? What are you talking about? Can you hear me?" But the call had already ended. I tried calling her back right away, but her phone went straight to voicemail. I left a series of messages, pleading with her not to do anything reckless. I even shot off a few texts, warning her that there would be serious consequences if she broke our vows. By morning, I still hadn't heard a thing from Jessica. I tried calling her multiple times, but no luck. That Friday was sheer torture, not knowing what was going on with my wife across the country. After work, I took the kids over to my parents' place and then drove over to Chris's house. His wife, Sarah, had gone to the same conference with Jessica. They were coworkers and close friends. Chris looked surprised when he opened the door. "Ethan, what's going on?" he asked. "Hey, Chris, I need a favor," I replied. "I haven't been able to get a hold of Jessica. She called me last night and something sounded off. Could you call Sarah to see if she knows anything?" "Of course," Chris said, "I'll call Sarah and let her know you're here, looking for Jessica." "Actually," I interrupted, "please don't tell her I'm here. I'm worried Jessica might have asked her to cover for her. Would you mind just calling Sarah, mentioning Jessica casually, and letting me listen in?" "Yeah, no problem, buddy. They should be wrapping up their classes right about now." While Chris was grabbing his phone, I don't know what came over me, but I turned on the voice recorder on mine. Sarah answered right away. "Hey, babe. Talk about perfect timing, I just got back to my room after the last class. We've got a dinner tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow." They chatted about the conference for a bit, and then Chris casually brought up Jessica. "Have you seen much of Jessica? Ethan left me a message, asking if I'd checked in with you about her." "Shoo. Don't let him know we talked," Sarah said quickly. "The last I saw of her was last night. We'd all been drinking when this soap opera star came over to our table. Jessica got his autograph, and they danced a few times. She even mentioned something about her and Ethan having a hall pass deal. The guy didn't waste any time, offering to be her partner. I tried to talk her out of it, but she was dead set on it, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime chance." Sarah continued, "Jessica even whispered in my ear that she was going to let him spend the night with her. Next thing I knew, she was walking out of the club with him, arm in arm. I haven't seen her since. Please, don't tell Ethan." Chris ended the call and turned to me, looking troubled. "Sorry, man. Do you and Jessica really have an arrangement for a hall pass?" "No," I answered firmly. "Years back, we played a game called Celebrity Hall Pass, but I told her right afterward that I'd never actually agree to something like that." "What are you planning to do?" he asked. I sighed, feeling the anger boiling inside. "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it won't be pretty." On my way home, I swung by my parents' place and asked my mom to keep the kids over the weekend. She sensed something was wrong but didn't press for details. Back at the house, I tried calling and texting Jessica a few more times, but still nothing. I figured she'd turned off her phone so she wouldn't be disturbed while she was off with her soap star. Jessica's flight was set to land mid-afternoon. Since Sarah had ridden back with Jessica, I asked Chris to send me a quick text when Jessica dropped her off. Meanwhile, I positioned our video camera on a shelf in the living room, ready to capture every word of our conversation. I wanted a record of whatever she had to say. Around 4 o'clock, I got Chris's message. I figured I had about 20 minutes. I slipped the camera remote under my leg, took a deep breath, and waited for her. The sound of the garage door opening made my heart race, but I stayed as calm as I could and pressed the record button. Jessica walked in, carrying her bag and bubbling with excitement. "Oh my God, that trip was insane," she exclaimed. "Yeah, I'll bet," I replied, doing my best to stay even-toned. "I've been trying to reach you." "Oh, my phone. It broke." Dropped it, and the screen just shattered. I took another breath and, as calmly as possible, brought up our last call from Thursday night. "The last time we talked, I could barely hear you. Sounded like you met some soap star and were planning on using your hall pass." She grinned, clearly oblivious to my tone. "Oh yeah, we were at this club, and Ryan Turner, yes, the Ryan Turner from my soap, came right over to our table. We danced, talked a little, and I mentioned our hall pass. God, he's even hotter in person. He actually wanted me to use it on him, which is why I called you. Can you believe that? This guy's been with all the famous actresses, and he was interested in me. He invited me to his place, and well. I'm sure you don't want the specifics." "Oh no," I replied, barely containing my anger, "I'd love to hear how this actor, who slept with a string of other women, was with my wife." Jessica was still caught up in her own excitement, totally unaware of my building rage. "Ethan, he was incredible. He's got all the moves, knows exactly how to handle a woman. He even took one of those pills, you'll have to try one sometime." He went on and on, it felt like he'd never stop. They really don't exaggerate when they say celebrities are good at this. She kept gushing over her story, but finally, she caught sight of my expression. "Ethan, are you okay?" she asked, her smile fading a bit. "No, Jessica, I'm not okay," I said, barely holding it together. "My wife is here, in our living room, beaming with pride over cheating on me with another man." "Cheating? Ethan, what are you talking about?" she asked, her excitement turning to confusion. "It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Ryan was my hall pass. I thought you'd be happy for me, that I got to live out this dream." "A dream?" I scoffed. "You think I should be happy that you've trashed our wedding vows for some fantasy?" Jessica's face twisted in frustration. "I didn't break our vows, Ethan. I just took a weekend to live out a fantasy. It's like what our friends did with their hall passes. I thought it was okay." She looked at me, her confidence beginning to waver. "No, Jessica, that was just a game, and I made it crystal clear it was only that, a game. I told you I'd never break our marriage vows, and I wouldn't stand for you doing it either. If a celebrity ever wanted you, I'd be thrilled for you. I just don't get why you can't be happy for me and let me have this unforgettable experience," she shot back. "Oh, don't worry, Jessica. I won't be forgetting this either. And I'm sure the family you've left out of this won't forget it either." I walked over to her and took her hand, slipping her wedding ring off her finger. "Did you wear this ring while you were with him? The symbol of our love and commitment. We didn't make love, we were just intimate. And yes, I had it on. I thought about taking it off, but Ryan wanted me to leave it on." "Of course, he did," I replied coldly. It probably made him feel all the more smug, knowing he was with a married woman, mocking our marriage the whole time. Jessica crossed her arms and put her hand on her hip, standing in what I knew was her angry pose. "You're making way too big of a deal out of this, Ethan. It was just a couple of nights. What, do you want me to take you upstairs and make it up to you?" "No, thanks." I paused, looking her dead in the eye. "Tell me, Soap Boy didn't bother with a condom, did he?" She scoffed, still defensive, but looked a bit thrown. "Well, no," she admitted, seeming confused by my question. "So, let me get this straight, you let a guy who you assume has been with dozens, maybe hundreds of other women, have unprotected intimacy with you? And he's a TV star, probably been with some men, too." Who knows what Hollywood diseases he's carrying? And did it ever cross your mind that he might leave you with more than just memories? Did you start using the pill again? Her eyes widened, and I saw the realization dawn on her. No, I'm not, I don't need to be on it. Oh, that's right, because oh God, I said, barely containing my anger. Well, hey, maybe you're carrying a TV star's baby now. Ever thought of that? Jessica's face went pale as she did the math in her head. No, I just had my period last week, so I shouldn't be fertile until later this week. It's interesting you're only considering that now. And by the way, are you absolutely sure? He might have left enough behind to reach an early egg. How many times did he not use protection? Ethan, you're blowing this way out of proportion, she replied defensively. Blowing it out of proportion? I said, disbelief thick in my voice. So, my wife's betrayal, risking our marriage, and throwing away her family isn't worth making a big deal about? Jessica stomped her foot, frustrated. I told you, it wasn't betrayal. I used my hall pass. I even called you to tell you about it. That's the issue, Jessica. You acted on something that doesn't exist. I never agreed to let you abandon our marriage vows or destroy our family. Stop being so dramatic. I honestly thought you'd be happy for me. I guess I misjudged you. I'm done talking about this. Now, where are the kids? She asked, trying to brush the conversation aside. They're at my parents'. I didn't want them here while we discussed our divorce. What? Divorce? You're seriously considering divorce over this? No, not considering. I locked eyes with her, keeping my voice calm. You made your decision, Jessica. Now I'll make mine. Her voice rose to a shout. This is ridiculous. You're seriously going to throw away our family over something like this? It's not that big of a deal, and you're just going to have to get over it. Done with the conversation, I calmly walked upstairs to the guest room, shutting and locking the door behind me. For over an hour, she pounded on the door, demanding that we talk. I didn't say a word. The next morning, I was out of the house before she woke up. I drove straight to my parents' place, where I found my dad up early, alone in the kitchen. Over coffee, I told him everything. Dad sat quietly, just listening as I laid it all out. When I finally finished, he looked up at me. What a cheating woman, he muttered. Then he turned to me. So, what are you planning to do, son? I don't know if I can get past this, Dad, I admitted. She knew how I felt about cheating, I thought she felt the same way. And that prenup her mom made us sign, what was that all about? I actually asked her mom about that at the wedding, Dad replied. She wouldn't give me much, just said she had her reasons. Jessica told me once that her mom had caught her dad cheating several times and wanted to protect her. Seems like Jessica's forgotten that, I said, laughing bitterly. Dad smirked, I'm sure you'll remind her soon enough. Oh, I will, but I want to see what she does next. She keeps saying it's no big deal and that I need to get over it. But, Dad, I don't believe she feels sorry, or even that she thinks she's done anything wrong. It was past 10 when my phone started lighting up with calls and messages from Jessica. She was desperate to know where I'd gone. When I didn't answer, she called our kids. Our daughter, Julie, walked into the kitchen, still yawning. Dad, Mom wants to know where you are and why you're not answering her calls. What did she tell you, honey? I asked her. Julie raised an eyebrow. Funny enough, that's exactly what she asked me, she wanted to know what you've told us. What's going on with you two? Are you cheating on her, or is she cheating on you? Damn, that girl's sharp, Dad chimed in with a chuckle. Julie's eyes widened, realization dawning. Oh my God, Mom cheated on you, didn't she? I looked at her calmly. Why don't you ask your mother that question? I didn't want her thinking I was feeding her anything. Julie's always been stubborn, and I knew she'd get to the truth on her own. Sure enough, she pulled out her phone, put it on speaker, and dialed Jessica. "Dad's here." "Did you cheat on him?" she asked bluntly. "Julie. What are you talking about?" Jessica's voice sounded tense. "Whatever he told you, it's not true." "What did he say to you?" "He didn't say anything, Mom. I could tell just by looking at him." "So, did you cheat on him or not?" "No, I did not." "And if he's saying I did, he's lying," Jessica snapped defensively. Julie shook her head, disgusted. "You sound guilty, Mom." She hung up and turned to me. "I'm sorry, Dad. I can't believe she did this to you. You've always talked about honesty and doing what's right. I guess you'll probably divorce her, and I don't blame you." With a look of quiet sadness, Julie turned and headed back upstairs. "She's got a good head on her shoulders," Dad said, watching her go. "She's wise beyond her years. She'll get through this, just fine." "I'm not so sure I will, Dad," I replied, feeling the weight of it all. About half an hour later, there was a loud knock on the front door. Dad went to answer, and I could hear Jessica's voice from the kitchen. "Mr. Roberts, I don't know what Ethan's been telling you, but he's making it up. I haven't done anything." "I'm sorry, Jessica," Dad replied, "but you're not welcome in this house today." She tried again, her voice raised. "Just tell him I didn't do anything. If he says otherwise, there's going to be trouble for him." With that, she stormed off. Dad closed the door and came back, shaking his head. "She sure looked angry," I said quietly. "Be careful, son," he replied. "I know that look. She's not going down without a fight. She's like a cornered cat, ready to lie and claw her way out. I hope you have proof of what she did because it looks like she's bracing for a battle." When I got home with the kids later that day, Jessica greeted us with cold silence. I spent another night in the guest room, but this time, there was no knocking at the door. The next morning, the kids left for school while I lingered in the kitchen, drinking coffee. I knew it was time to confront Jessica. She walked into the kitchen, looking as if she didn't have a care in the world. "The kids head out okay?" she asked casually. I nodded as she poured herself some coffee. "Honey, why are you sleeping in the guest room? Are you not feeling well?" she asked with a concerned look. "You know why. I have no desire to sleep next to a cheating wife." Her expression turned to feigned confusion. "Cheating wife? Ethan, what on earth are you talking about? Are you seriously going to deny being intimate with a soap star while you were out of town?" Jessica's face hardened, and her tone grew icy. "Ethan, I don't know what you're trying to pull here, but if you accuse me of something you can't prove, you'll regret it." "You don't have a shred of proof." "So that's how it is, you're drawing the battle lines," I replied. "No, Ethan," she said calmly, "I'm offering you a chance to go back to how things were, but that's your choice. I'm willing to let go of your ridiculous accusations. Sorry, but I'm not willing to forget what you did. I'm going to say it one more time, I didn't do anything. And you can't prove otherwise, so if you try to accuse me, you'll be the one who pays for it. Let it go, and we can get back to our marriage." I knew a threat when I heard one. Without a word, I stood up, grabbed my keys, and left, pretending I was heading to work. I had already called in sick, so I parked down the street and waited until I saw her leave for her job at the school, where she worked as an associate principal. When she was gone, I headed back to the house. Her words still echoed in my head, and I knew I'd need every bit of proof I could find. If she wanted a fight, I was ready to gather all the ammunition I could. Sarah had mentioned that Jessica got the soap star's autograph. If she was planning to deny everything, I figured she wouldn't have gotten rid of something like that, it was too big a trophy. I guessed she'd have it hidden somewhere. After 2 hours of searching, I finally uncovered it. Jessica had an old briefcase tucked in the back of her closet. It was locked, but I knew she always used the same code for her briefcases. At the bottom, under a stack of folders, I found the picture. It was a typical publicity photo of the soap star, signed, "To my friend Jessica, Ryan Turner." But on the back, there was a second signature, far more personal: "You were great in bed, Ryan." I scanned the photo and carefully put it back in its place. My next stop was my lawyer's office. Before heading out, I copied the scan of the photo, our prenup, the recording from Sarah's call, and Jessica's confession onto 2 flash drives. The lawyer I'd chosen was famous for her no-nonsense approach with cheating spouses. Vicky Sampson had a reputation as a fierce force in the world of divorce. When I finished telling her the story, Vicky leaned back, a satisfied smile spreading across her face. "I love it," she said. "This is ruthless. You're setting a trap and waiting to spring it when there's no escape. Just remember, until we show the proof, people may think you're crazy or making this up. I'm prepared for that. I want her to think she's got the upper hand right up until the last moment." Vicky shook my hand firmly. "I'll start the paperwork and have her served at the school. But first, I need you to check a couple of things. Go through your credit card bills and see if you can find the club where she met her celebrity friend. Also, access her iCloud account. I'd bet anything there's a selfie of her and Ryan. She's probably smart enough to delete anything incriminating off her phone, but we might get lucky with her cloud backup." I rushed home and got onto Jessica's computer. Getting into her iCloud was easier than I expected. Hidden in her photo library were exactly what I was hoping to find: 2 pictures of her with the soap star and one of her, the soap star, and Sarah. I copied them to a flash drive. A quick scan of the photos also revealed the club's name on a wall behind them. When I showed my findings to Vicky, she was thrilled. She advised me to keep quiet about the photos. Her plan was to serve Jessica with the divorce papers at her school on Friday afternoon. That would give me time to drop the kids off at my parents' for the weekend. She also made it clear I was not to leave the house, no matter how Jessica reacted. Friday afternoon, just after I'd dropped the kids off at my parents', my phone started ringing. It was Jessica. I ignored it and let her texts pile up. I'd only been home about 10 minutes when she came storming in. Sitting in the living room, I hit the record button on the video camera as soon as I heard the garage door open. I wanted every word captured, just in case she let something slip. "You son of a, what do you think you're doing?" she yelled as she stormed into the room. I opened my mouth to reply, but she cut me off before I could get a word out. "You just couldn't let it go, could you? What's wrong, Ethan? Did your little male ego take a hit? You've humiliated me in front of my entire staff, and you're going to pay for it. You want a divorce? Fine, I'll give you one, but you'll be the one paying. You know you can't prove this adultery nonsense you put in the papers, and without proof, I'm going to take you for every last cent. I hope you're happy. You could have just let this go. Did it wound your pride that I had incredible intimacy with a celebrity? All you had to do was let me have a bit of fun, but no, you had to play the jealous husband." Jessica paced around the room, practically fuming while I sat there, silent. She turned back to me, eyes blazing. "When are you moving out?" "I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here," I replied calmly. "Oh, yes, you are. You want a divorce? Then you're the one who has to leave." She stood there, waiting for me to move, but I just smiled back at her, unfazed. "Fine," she snapped. "When all this is done, you'll wish you just kept your mouth shut and let us carry on with our lives." The next month was tense, to say the least. Jessica and I barely exchanged a word, and slowly, the kids started taking her side. Julie even began to doubt if her mother had cheated at all. Jessica was out there telling anyone who'd listen that I was making up the whole story. Her lawyer responded to our petition, asking for penalties due to false accusations and even trying to have the court order me out of the house, which was denied. The court scheduled a hearing quickly, giving both sides only a short time to gather witnesses and prepare for depositions. My lawyer deposed both Jessica and her friend Sarah. They denied everything, claiming Jessica never went off with the soap star and hadn't even met him or gone to any club. When it was my turn to prepare for deposition, my lawyer was clear: I needed to stick to the truth but avoid volunteering any extra information. Her goal was to make Jessica's lawyer believe we didn't have any solid evidence of Jessica's affair. Just as Mrs. Sampson had expected, they went after me about how I had no first-hand knowledge of any affair. But they didn't ask if I had any evidence of her cheating. From the way her lawyer handled things, I could tell he had no idea Jessica had actually done what I accused her of. At the court hearing itself, I'm sure Jessica thought everything was going perfectly. I testified about her adultery, my deep opposition to infidelity, and my stance against hall passes. Her lawyer's cross-examination was focused on those same points covered in the deposition: how I wasn't at her conference and didn't see her do anything with anyone else. Jessica took the stand and swore she hadn't done anything. She claimed to be just as opposed to adultery as I was and insisted she would never agree to anything like a hall pass. Jessica's lawyer even brought Sarah to testify that no encounter with the soap star had ever happened. While she was testifying, I looked over at her husband, Chris, sitting in the courtroom. He avoided my gaze, staring at the floor. Sarah looked uneasy, but she stuck to her story, swearing the whole thing was a fabrication. When Sarah finished, Jessica and her lawyer exchanged smug looks as he announced that they had no further evidence. He got up, arguing that they wanted sanctions for what they claimed were our false accusations. The judge began reprimanding my lawyer for not having backed up our claims. Mrs. Sampson, with a smile on her face, rose to her feet. "Excuse me, Your Honor. We have some rebuttal evidence to present," Mrs. Sampson announced. Jessica's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. We were not informed of any rebuttal evidence." Mrs. Sampson, with her usual calm, replied, "There's no requirement to disclose rebuttal evidence. If their witnesses had told the truth, there'd be no need for it." The judge gave a small smile and nodded for Mrs. Sampson to continue. She called her investigator to the stand. "Judge, before we begin, we acknowledge that Mrs. Roberts did not have intimacy with Ryan Turner." My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mrs. Sampson shot me a look that told me to stay quiet and let her work. Jessica's lawyer bolted to his feet. "With this admission that my client didn't commit adultery, we request an immediate dismissal and ask the court to impose sanctions on Mr. Roberts for these baseless accusations." But Mrs. Sampson, grinning, replied, "No, we're not saying she didn't commit adultery, we're simply saying it wasn't with Ryan Turner." Sarah was called back to the stand. My lawyer questioned her again, asking if she had accompanied Jessica at the conference and if they'd met the man they believed to be Ryan Turner. Sarah stuck to her story, denying it all. My lawyer then asked if she'd called her husband, telling him that Jessica had left with a man who wasn't her husband. Even with a reminder that she was under oath, Sarah insisted that no such call had been made. I glanced over at Chris, who mouthed, "I'm sorry." I returned his look, mouthing, "No, you will be." My lawyer pressed play on the recording of Sarah's call. Jessica's lawyer was instantly on his feet, objecting to its use. "Judge, my client was an invited guest at the witness's home and permitted to listen to the call," my lawyer countered. The judge waved Jessica's lawyer back down, turning to Sarah and asking if the voice in the recording was hers. Reluctantly, she admitted it was. As the evidence mounted, I finally felt a sense of justice, knowing the truth was coming to light. Jessica was next back on the stand. She again denied having admitted anything about being intimate with another man. But when the video of her own graphic confession played, she gasped, visibly shaken. The courtroom watched as the selfies and the signed photo were entered into evidence. As Jessica left the witness stand, the judge paused her. "Counsel, I'm a bit confused. You stated Mrs. Roberts didn't have intimacy with Ryan Turner, yet the evidence you just presented seems to say otherwise. Mrs. Sampson nodded and called her investigator back. Judge, our evidence shows Mrs. Roberts did commit adultery, but it wasn't with the person she thought. The investigator presented surveillance photos from the club, showing Jessica with the man she left with. These photos confirm that he is not Ryan Turner, but a lookalike known for targeting married women. He also happens to have been diagnosed with several STDs. I glanced at Jessica, and the shock on her face was priceless. After a brief recess, the judge returned to deliver a stern speech about honesty and marital commitment. He ruled that Jessica had indeed committed adultery as defined in the prenup and ruled in my favor, upholding the terms. The judge also stated that even without the prenup, he would have granted me custody of our children, having found Jessica unfit due to her extensive attempts at deception. With tears streaming down her face, Jessica started to leave the counsel table, but the judge's voice thundered, "Mrs. Roberts, remain where you are. We're not done here." The judge then called Sarah to join Jessica at the bench. "Both of you, raise your right hand. You took an oath to tell the truth in this courtroom, and in here, that oath is sacred," he said, his tone icy. He fixed his gaze on Sarah. "I don't care if you thought you were doing a favor for a friend, lying under oath is still lying. Had this been a criminal case, both of you would be facing jail time." With a look of disgust, the judge fined both of them the maximum penalty of $5,000 for perjury and contempt of court. As if her day couldn't get worse, Jessica walked out of the courthouse straight into the path of a local news crew. I later found out that my lawyer had tipped them off, ensuring her story would get the publicity it deserved. "Mrs. Roberts, any comment on throwing away your family for a one-night stand with a fake TV star?" a reporter called out, and it was like the last straw for Jessica. She let out a scream that could chill your blood and then lunged at the reporter. In a flurry of fists and shouts, she yanked the reporter by the hair, hurling insults as she did. A deputy quickly deployed his taser, bringing her to a halt. The cameraman captured every second of the outburst. Jessica's meltdown made headlines on all the major news channels that night. Sadly for her, she couldn't watch her finest moment. She was locked up in the county jail, where she'd be staying for the next 6 months. No, I didn't have some beautiful blonde waiting in the wings to replace Jessica. I was too focused on raising our 2 kids as a single dad. And no, I didn't take her back when she got out, although she tried. My mother, feeling sorry for her, urged me to give her another chance, but I was done. After 3 months of constant calls and messages from Jessica, I finally agreed to meet her at her mom's place. I sat there quietly while Jessica, through tears, told me how much she missed me and how much she regretted being cut off from our family. Because of her arrest and the assault conviction, she was limited to supervised visits with the kids. Jessica apologized for lying about her hookup, as she called it, admitting she felt humiliated for falling for a fake celebrity. She ended her plea by begging me to take her back, promising she'd be the best wife I could ever want. I stood up, took a steadying breath, and replied, "Jessica, that was heartfelt. I believe you're sincere. You apologized for lying, said you missed our family, and said you love me. I do believe you. But it's what you didn't say that speaks volumes. Not once did you say you were sorry for breaking our vows or show any remorse for it. I think you're only sorry you didn't end up with your dream guy. I still don't think you're truly sorry for cheating on me, or that you even see it as cheating. So, Jessica, my answer is no. No, I won't take you back, now or ever. I need you to stop reaching out. If you don't, I'll renew the restraining order I was granted after your arrest." Jessica stood up, tears running down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I enjoyed it. Does that make you happy to hear? We're done, Jessica. Go live your life, it just won't be with me." I turned and walked out, Jessica's voice screaming after me while her mom held her back. And that's how it ended. Looking back, I can't say it was easy, but I felt a sense of finality I never expected.